everybody, I'm here today to do my June wrap up. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear the singing elephant in the background, but my daughter will not start playing peekaboo, so if you can hear that for this whole thing, I'm sorry, but it's better than a constantly screaming baby. As you can see, we also have our special guest helper today, who is Bailey the bear. He lives on this sofa and it felt rude to kick him out so that I could talk about books. So he is much bigger than me. But yeah, he's gonna help us talk about books. I mean, he's not really gonna help us, but we can pretend. I forgot to count how many books that I read in June, so I will just take a quick moment to do that because I'm wholly unprepared. 29 books in June. So actually, we're so close to doing a book a day again, and we would have, but I had a DNF. So that is an interesting discovery. Had no idea we'd gotten that close. Well, I'll talk about the DNF first, which was Dearly Departed by Leah Havel. When I told you guys I was reading this one for my June TBR, I did worry about it because I had a book that I DNF'd in June called Dead Beautiful, and somebody had basically said that that was a better version of this. I thought, oh, well, I've also got this, so I might as well try it. Managed to get 150 pages in, and it's just the slowest moving thing I think I've ever read. Makes sense because it's zombies and they're dead. It's not as slow as Lord of the Rings, but I actually managed to make it through Lord of the Rings, so I think that proves that it's like a bit worse, I guess. So we've got far too many perspectives going on in this one. So you follow Nora and Bram and her friend Pamela and a guy called Wolf who was like an army general, and then there's also Victor. And that was just 5 in the 150 pages that I read. I don't know whether we ended up getting more later, but none of the other perspectives really added anything. Nora and Bram, yeah, it makes sense. They're like the romancy couple at the forefront of everything, and it's good to see things from both sides of their perspective. But the other 3 just added nothing to the story. And it was a case that where we were with Victor, he was talking about things that then got regurgitated in Bram's perspective. Pamela was filling us in on how people were feeling because Nora had been like abducted by zombies, but we didn't really need to know how people were feeling because when somebody gets abducted by zombies, it's pretty much guaranteed that people aren't going to be the happiest about that. They're going to be concerned on where she is. So yeah, I did end up putting this one down, and I am unhauling it, and I'm also unhauling the sequel. Also found out that there was meant to be a 3rd book, and then it never got finished, and it's never been released. Leah Havel kind of did a statement and said, babies everywhere. Leah Havel did a statement and said that she would be releasing it eventually, but this was out in 2011, and the 3rd one is still nowhere to be seen, so I just don't really feel like investing myself enough in 2 books to then never read the 3rd one, so this one did get DNF. But otherwise, it would have been a book a day, which is impressive. Sean is having a wonderful time with both of the screaming babies. We've picked exactly the wrong time to do this, apparently, so I'm really sorry if there's just screaming throughout. But we're committed now, we're doing it. So I'll start off by talking about the 3 blog tours that I took part in June, and those were for Again by E. Lockhart, Midnight's Twins by Holly Race, and What Unbreakable Looks Like by Kate McLaughlin. These 2 books were kindly sent to me by Hotkey Books, so thank you so much, guys, for letting me take part in these 2 tours and for sending these copies through to me. And I took part in What Unbreakable Looks Like with Wednesday Books. I'll link all 3 of the blog tour posts down below because they've got proper full-length reviews of each of these titles. But they all actually got 4 stars, which is nice. Like, it was quite funny because I didn't mean to do that. I was just checking out my ratings for everything this morning. I was like, oh, all 3 of the blog tour books got 4 stars. That's cool. So Again is kind of like Groundhog Day in that you've got a girl who meets a boy at a dog park, and then you kind of play out the different ways that their meeting could go, and then the story continues with one of those. So it's like in one of the worlds, like he has a star of some sort, I think, and in one of the worlds she asks about it and he's like, you're really rude, and then they never speak again. And in another world, like, her dog runs away, so they both, like, chase the dog, and then they're, like, laughing and joking, and then they go on a date together because of the dog, and then there's, like, another world again. I did read this on NetGalley originally, because this copy hadn't arrived through in time for my blog post, which was interesting, because on NetGalley there's no differentiation between the different universes. So I did kind of wonder if it was an issue with my arc to start with, because I knew it was going to be repeating universes, but I didn't know quite how it was going to happen. And this is very much a case of it repeats huge chunks of the story again and again and again. Again. I'm so funny. But yeah, but in the actual physical copy, it's all in bold when it's like a plot that doesn't get followed. So I think it would have been much easier to follow in a physical copy. I really enjoyed it, actually. I've seen some people saying that it doesn't really live up to their expectations, but for me, I thought that it was pretty much on the mark. There was like a bit of a twist towards the end, which I totally saw coming, but it was a really cute twist, and I just think that it's done really well for what it is, and especially considering how short it is. Like, we read this in one sitting. We read this in a day, the day before our blog tour post was due, and like, I literally just read it, reviewed it, that was it. There was nothing, it wasn't a struggle to get through, it was quite easy to digest. Yeah, highly recommend this one. The next blog tour that we took part in was Midnight's Twins by Holly Race. This is Holly Race's debut novel, and this is the first book in a trilogy. This follows twins Fern and Ollie, who find out that there's like another world that people can go to in their dreams, called Anwin, I believe. Yes, Anwin is the other world, and our world is some Ither. Ither is our world. It's been a while. Read a lot of books this month. Brain is beginning to melt a little bit. So basically, Fern and Ollie find out that their mum was a knight in Anwin, and that they are following in her footsteps, and they're becoming knights themselves. But there is a politician in our world who is also one of the, or was a knight of Anwin, who is kind of trying to take people's dreams away from them. So he's like trying to take people. Sorry, she's cracking me up. She's just talking to her toy carrot. She's cracking me up. But yeah, that he's trying to take people's creativity and their individuality away, so that their dream world will kind of die, because there will be no creativity or individuality, so there will be no inspire, is what this kind of dream power is called. There will be no more inspire in Anwin, so Anwin will die, effectively. Brutal is a good word for this one. Considering it's the first book in a series, I was assuming that there was going to be like hardly any named character deaths. I thought it would just be getting to know everybody, getting to know the world, but oh my god, basically everybody you care about dies, and it's heartbreaking. Like, I was just shocked by so many of the things that happen in here, and that wasn't something that I was expecting to feel. I was expecting it to be quite like paint by numbers, like interesting world, interesting characters, interesting concept, but like, oh, it's a bit kind of predictable, looking forward to book 2 but not sure how I'm going to feel about it. But that was completely the opposite. Like, I cannot wait for book 2, and I know it's going to be impressive. And I put in my review that, like, if Holly Race carries on writing books like this, and if the rest of the series is as strong as this one, she's going to be a new favourite author for me, because this was just astounding. Highly recommend Midnight's Twins, and I'm already like, I really want to reread it before I read the second one, because I think I'll get my head around the world a bit quicker, because it took a while for me to kind of get into it. But there's like bits where you jump from, so Fern's perspective is told in first person, but then you jump to her mum's perspective, which is told in third person, and that's a really good kind of way to show the history of Anwin and to show her mum's perspective. So you do get a lot of that kind of separation between them, and I just think for a first read it was a 4-star, but I think if I reread this one I'd probably end up bumping it up. There are a few like little clunky bits that I wasn't a fan of, because it made the story flow a bit strangely, but again, it's a debut, like, that's allowed. But yeah, really looking forward to carrying on with this series. And the third book that we had for the blog tour was What Unbreakable Looks Like by Kate McLaughlin. So this follows a girl called Lex who has been through a human trafficking experience. She was renamed Poppy, and she kind of was in a motel with a load of other girls who were also being trafficked. And their kind of pimp Mitch was like, he kind of conned them all into thinking he was in love with them, so that they would do anything for him. And you follow Lex. The big story starts when the police come and raid the motel, and all of the girls kind of get freed, and then you follow Lex, and some of the other girls kind of come in and out of it again, and you see where they all end up, and like how it kind of plays out, like whether they manage to like catch Mitch and get their kind of, not revenge, but their kind of closure from it all. And I think this one is also, again, it's a really powerful story. I've read one book similar before, which was Naked by Stacey Trombley, and I was not a huge fan of that one, because I just didn't connect to the character at all. It all felt a bit kind of childish, and it didn't feel believable. But I think this one has a really authentic feel. Like, you get the kind of anger that Lex has, and you get her kind of desperation to carry on with a normal life, and you really feel for her. And I think the progression that she goes through is very believable and very realistic. Again, I'll link my blog posts to all 3 of those down below, but highly recommend all of these titles, and I'm really glad that I got invited to take part in these blog tours, because they were brilliant. The next book I want to talk about is Dark Age by Pierce Brown. apparently our whole house is falling apart. So that was like a tire repair kit just like fell down and we've got no idea how. But I was so sad it was a glass breaking. It sounded so loud. But it's the ghosts. We've got ghosts apparently. But they obviously didn't want me to talk about Dark Age. And to be fair, I don't want to talk about Dark Age either. This was like my most anticipated book last year. And then I didn't read it. And now I kind of wish I hadn't. I'm going to be filming a full discussion of it at some point if I can bring myself to do that. Because I've got too much to talk about and it's going to get quite spoilery. Because obviously it's the 5th book in a series. It's hard to talk about it like without spoiling anything. But like considering this is 750 pages and it just feels like nothing happens. I've loved all of the other ones. Every single one of his books. Every single time I've read it. I've given it 5 stars. And this one I couldn't even rate. I think it's going to end up being a 3. But I'm just so conflicted on it because I was so certain it was going to be a 5 that as soon as it wasn't a 5 I just wanted to burn it. And I'm not going to obviously because it's gorgeous and it's Pierce Brown and I wanted to love it. And I'm disappointed in myself for not loving it. Like there were bits I liked, there were bits I didn't like, there were bits I can't even remember already, and it's only been a few weeks since I finished it. But yeah, gonna talk about this one more in depth at some other point, but not happy with this one. It's just so heartbreaking to say. Oh, hate myself. The next book that I want to talk about, well the next books I'm going to talk about are the ones that I read from our Read Then Go pile. So Dearly Departed was one of these, and these are the other ones that I picked. Basically we have like a whole wall over our fireplace of books that we want to read, and then we'll decide whether to keep them or whether to donate them, because they're ones that we're not sure whether we're going to love them enough to keep them. Actually went quite well this month. I read a few last month and most of them were awful. These ones, I think I actually gave 4 stars to all of them. Red Queen might have been a 3.5. So we'll start with This Is Really Happening. This is True Stories by Erin Shack. There's 11 essays by Erin Shack, who is, or was, I'm not sure, this was 2017, a senior writer for BuzzFeed. And so Erin had cancer when she was 19, and so it shares some of the essays from like her experience having cancer as a teenager and her recovery. Also some of her like crazy life stories and some of the things that she gets up to at BuzzFeed. I actually enjoyed this much more than I thought I was going to. It's been described as like Jenny Lawson for the Snapchat generation, and we loved Furiously Happy when we read that. That's Jenny Lawson's second book. This one didn't make me laugh out loud. That Jenny Lawson's book had me like literally cackling. I had to stop reading because I was laughing so hard. This one didn't make me laugh once, but it was in kind of like a, by the time you finish reading it, Erin Shack feels like a friend. Like her voice is so kind of personable and so relatable, and she just really puts you at ease, and you do kind of feel like, oh, I've just read like stories from a friend rather than just a book. So this one was much more enjoyable than we thought it was going to be. I then read Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. This is, I think, Sarah Pinborough's first adult thriller. She writes in like lots of different genres. This one's a bit of a conflicting one for me because the beginning half I loved. So it starts off, we're following 3 different characters. We've got 2 perspectives, but 3 different characters. So Louise meets David in a bar and they kiss. And then she finds out that David is married to Adele, who is our other perspective, and also David is her new boss. So the first like quarter of this feels a bit like kind of like a rom-com, like chick lit, like really funny. She's like, oh no, I've just seen the guy I snogged in the bar with his wife, I'm going to hide in the bathroom. And it's really, really funny. You know, obviously it's going to end up getting less funny because it's a thriller. But it's so clever because it's like it weaves the different genres together. So you go really smoothly from like that chick-litty feeling into like the domestic thrillery. The tension builds and you've got all like the what the hell's going on here, like really gripping stuff. And then it gets a bit kind of paranormal towards the end, which I wasn't expecting and I wasn't a huge fan of. But then there is a twist in the last kind of 2 chapters and I was just a sucker for it. Like I was like, oh, this is a like solid 2.5 star, like I might round up to a 3. I gave it 4 stars. I just backed it straight up. I was like, that twist I did not see coming, and I love that twist. It's so funny. So if you're interested in a book that's a bit kind of wild and wacky, blends a few genres together, then this is certainly one I would recommend. It does say the most shocking ending you'll read all year, and I thought, oh, that means it's not really a shock. It was still a shock. It is so fucking ridiculous that you do not see it coming and then it slaps you in the face that you're like, oh my god. Like, I was reading it upstairs and Ezra was asleep on me, and I'm just there going. I literally just paused and had my mouth just wide open. I was like, I can't be reading what I think I'm reading, and I put the book down. I was like, and then I lifted it back up again, and yeah, what I thought I was reading, I was actually reading. Damn. Like, I'm probably still going to unhaul it, because once you've read it once, there's not really much point reading it again, and Sean's so interested in it. Like, I came down, it was like midnight, I come down, I'm like, oh my god, you won't believe what's just happened in my book. And he's like, I don't really care. Our daughter's nearly asleep. Can you please just go back to bed? And I'm like, I need to talk about it with someone. Sean, you're the only person I can talk to it about. So, definitely an interesting one, this. And then the last book that we read from the Read Then Go pile for this month was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is the first book in the Red Queen series and is also Victoria Aveyard's debut. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. I didn't round it up to 4 because I didn't think I liked it enough. So I think on Goodreads I bapped it at a 3, but it's definitely like a 3.5. Like it's better than average, but it's not a new favourite for me. I'm definitely interested in carrying on in the rest of the series. So if you don't know anything about Red Queen, this follows a girl called Mare Barrow. She is a red who has powers, and in this world it's kind of split into like red and silver, and the reds are powerless. They are kind of like the slaves, they're the soldiers, they're just basically abused by the silvers because they don't have powers, they're worthless. And then the silvers have like different powers, like they can control your thoughts, they can control like lightning and fire and water and like rock, and they've got like magical like elemental control. That aspect of it I loved. And there are some tropes at the beginning that get kind of twisted on their head really well, which is good, but then there's a lot of tropes that are kind of the same that you'd expect. Like there's the dead family member, but are they really dead or are they gonna come back? And then there's the kind of overlooked heir of the kingdom who's like, oh, I don't really want to be king anyway. Like, it would be cool, but... And then you've got, like, the kind of, like, fake love triangle between, like, her and the brothers, when it's like, oh, which one's she gonna pick? It's like, well, actually, she's only known them for, like, a couple weeks, and neither of them have really done anything that redeeming, so I don't really care if she picks either of them. But the world that Victoria Aveyard has crafted is, like, really, really interesting, because it feels like it's kind of a dystopian. Like, it feels like it's our world, but in the future, but I'm not sure, because it might be like a fantasy world. I'm not sure whether that's going to come out more in the future, but I'm definitely interested to see where it goes. So I am going to be carrying on with this series, and I am really glad I read it. Definitely keeping this one, but it's just a case of, yeah, the pacing's a bit all over the place. Again, some of the stuff's like quite tropey. I've seen a lot of like people really hating Mare, and I don't think she's that bad. Like there was some of the like deadpan kind of sarcastic jibes she came out with that had me cackling. Like I thought that was really good, and I can't see why people are saying she's like a Mary Sue, because she does go through like training and she does struggle to get control of her powers, and she does have a lot of kind of internal turmoil of like, who am I in this new world? Like, where do I kind of fit in? So yeah, I think it's certainly one of those ones. It feels almost generic, but not at the same time, if that makes any kind of sense at all. But yeah, glad I finally picked it up. Then I'll talk about my TBR jar picks for the month. So my reviews for these ones are already up, so I'll link those down below as well. So this month I read The Memory Game by Sharon Sant, was a 1 star. A guy dies, and that's basically all that happens. He's dead, he's floating around. He's like, oh, I'm going to make friends with this girl I used to believe. She's the only person who can see me. Oh, why am I here? Don't really mind. Do you not want to find out who killed you in the hit and run, David? No, I don't. I don't really care. In what world? In what world? It was so badly written and so unconvincing, and I hated it. I also gave another 1 star, and that was to Southern Perfection by Casey Peeler. So this is a kind of YA romance. Sounded like it was going to be a really cute one. Like, she has a secret and she like loves music, and I was like, oh my god, is she going to be like a secret singer? Is it going to be like Hannah Montana? No, her granddad has cancer and he's dying, and she's keeping it a secret. And then like she keeps secrets from the guy that she's like interested in, but then when he keeps secrets back, she goes like mental at him. Like she screams and shouts and she like attacks him, and he's like, whoa, I'm really sorry, I won't do it again. And then literally the next day he gets another secret and he keeps it from her. Or you could just communicate if you want your relationship to be even mildly convincing. So that was a big no. The third book that I read from the TBR jar was Lucy and Lynn by Alyce Pung. This is kind of... it feels almost like literary fiction. It's being marketed as a YA contemporary, but it feels more YA historical. Not sure. It's set a few years ago, but I'm not quite sure if it's actually explicitly said when. It's set in Australia, and it's when the kind of Chinese immigrants have just gone to Australia, so they're still kind of being discriminated against, and they're struggling to fit into the community, I guess. I don't know. It's a girl. She goes to a private school because she wins a scholarship, and she is writing letters home to her friend Lynn, just basically telling her all about everything that's happening at the school. And it's just really dry. Like, it's written well, and I gave it 3 stars, but it's just very, very forgettable. Like, I'm not going to remember this one in a couple of months. I can hardly remember it now. It's like Mean Girls, but then they're not really that mean. And there's not really any plot. It's just the girl bumbling through her first year at school, doesn't really like the posh girl, like the posh mean girls, tries to make some friends, doesn't really fit in. And it's, if I'd been expecting something that was a bit more like literary fiction, I might have gotten on with it better, but I was expecting something with a bit more of a kind of plot, a bit more propulsion. So that one wasn't the best. I also read The Boy Next Door by Katie Van Ark. That was another 3-star for me. This is a figure skating pair. The girl is in love with the boy. The boy is, like, known all over the school because he's, like, a player, and he's, like, his 2 weeks is, like, his, nickname thing, like the in-joke, because he's only ever with a girl for 2 weeks, and then he gets bored of her and moves on with somebody else. And Gabe isn't sure whether he wants to have a relationship with Maddie because he's worried that he'll mess it all up after 2 weeks. This is another one of those books that really focuses and relies on the fact that the characters don't communicate. And I feel like if you've been doing figure skating and you've got blades on your feet and you've been throwing each other through the air and, like, doing lifts and, like, really daring stuff, you would be better at communicating. And I know that would ruin the whole plot if she was like, hey, I like you, can we just go out now? And him be like, I'm not too sure. Yeah, it would ruin the whole plot, but I just think it would be more realistic. I liked the figure skating-y descriptions. I thought that the kind of programs that Katie Van Ark described sounded really fun, and I would have loved to have seen some of them, but wasn't a huge fan of the romance, and it all got very cringy towards the end. I'd begun kind of wanting to DNF it, at the end happened, and I was like, I should have just given up on this one. So actually the best book I read from the TBR jar this month was Friend Request by Laura Marshall, which I gave 4 stars to, which means that that's 2 domestic thrillers this month that I've read that have gotten 4 stars, which is good because so far this year they've all been 1 stars. So at least I've gotten 2 good thrillers out of this month. The premise of this one is that there is a girl called Maria who died when they were all at school together, and Louise, another Louise, which was nice and confusing because I read them really close together. I was like, this can't be Louise again. Louise gets a friend request through from Maria's Facebook page. And now she was kind of involved in Maria's death, so she thinks that somebody's found out her involvement and they're coming for her, but she doesn't know who it can be, she doesn't know how they found out, and she's kind of feeling that guilt because there are other people involved, so she can't go to the police, she has to cover up for other people. Most of the time I see the twists coming really, really easily, but this one completely blindsided me, and I loved that. Like, I had my suspicions. I thought it was really, really obvious. I thought that the red herrings were sprinkled well, but I thought that the kind of direction that it was pointing in was just too obvious for it to be anything else, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, bang, there's a massive twist. And again, this was one that, like, I was trying to read a couple chapters so I would go back to sleep in the night time because I woke up and couldn't drift off, and I was like, oh, I'll just read a couple chapters. Finished the thing. It's like 2.5 hours of reading because as soon as it started unraveling, I just couldn't put it down. So yeah, that's definitely an author I'm going to keep my eye on. I think she's got 1 more book out at the moment called something like 3 Liars. So I'll be keeping an eye on Laura Marshall in the future. So yeah, TBR jar, bit hit and miss. There were 2 books I really, really should have DNF'd there. A 3rd one that I considered DNFing. So I think this might be my worst month so far. But then the first month I did the TBR jar, I did DNF a book. So I don't know whether that is worse, or whether it's worse that I just forced my way through these. Like, the memory game was so short, it was like less than 200 pages, and it took me longer than any of the books I've read the whole month. That's not good. Right, I've also got another NetGalley book I'd like to talk about that I was meant to talk about earlier and I forgot. It was one that I started at the end of May, finished at the beginning of June, which was called Unscripted by Nicole Krosnia. Not a fan of this one. Girl goes to an improv camp, it's all kind of sexisty because lads at the improv camp. I don't know a lot about improv camps, but I can't imagine that they would be that bad. I might be wrong. Please let me know if you've had experience with that and if it is kind of the sexist environment that Nicole Krosniak crafts. But it all just feels very stereotypical, very kind of paint by numbers, like, we're going to be mean to the girl because she's a girl. There's none of the comedy in it is funny either. Like, I was expecting, because it's like improv camp, that it would be like kind of funny despite the fact that there's some dark stuff going on. But it wasn't funny at all. I just wasn't interested in the slightest. Yeah, I can't even remember what I gave this one. I think maybe 3 stars. I think I might have been a bit generous on that, so maybe I shouldn't have. Yeah, 3 stars for unscripted. But yeah, that was a bit generous. So then we will start on our stack of sequels that we read this month. So we read Murder Most Unladylike by Robin Stevens. It's actually the first book in a series, but it's a reread, so I'm putting it in with the sequels. I gave this 4 stars when I originally read it, bumped it up to 5 stars because I think it's very enjoyable to reread it once you've read the other books in the series, because you can see the way that the characters develop and how they change so much from the beginning. This was the middle grade monthly pick. I'll link the live show down in the description because Jade and Gavin have already discussed it for the month. Yeah, there were some of the things that were said in the live show made me think, like, maybe I should drop it back down to a 4, but I'm just going to stick with it because the rest of the Most Unladylike series was 5 stars for me. Going to be rereading them over the next few months, so hopefully I'll still love them as much as I did when I get to the end of the reread. We also read Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So again, we're following Pip as she investigates a crime, but in this one she has made a podcast based off of the crime that happened in the first book. So she uses her podcast to try and solve the crime that happens in this one. Didn't love it as much as the first one, which was a shame. Ended up giving it a 4 star. It was a high 4 star. Loved the fact that Pip and Ravi's relationship was explored a bit more because they are so focused on the crime in the first book that they can't explore the relationship aspects, but I love the fact that we got to see more of them together. Enjoyed the kind of ragtag bunch of friends that Pip has. Thought that some of the character development on some of them didn't feel as realistic as it could, but I'm still looking forward to the 3rd book. We also read One of Us Is Next by Karen and McManus. Gave this one 3 stars, which again wasn't as high as the first book, but still enjoyed it. So in this one you've got a Truth or Dare game starts at Bayview High. It's not actually following the original Bayview 4, which was fun, because I thought that it was going to be following the same people, and I was a bit worried when there's only 3 of them on the cover, that like somebody's going to end up dying, and I didn't want any of the original 4 to get killed. But it follows kind of like the next generation of Bayview, so you follow Bronwyn's sister, her friends, but the original Bayview 4 do pop up in the background again and again, which is really nice. It's just a bit forgettable. Like, I thought it was very, very predictable what had happened. I said to Sean when we were about a quarter of the way into it that I could see exactly what had happened, and that's exactly where it went, which was the opposite to the first book for me. The first book for me was a bit more of a surprise, but this one I could see where it was going. But Sean couldn't see where it was going when he knew exactly what happened in the first one. So I can see why people would like this one more, but it just wasn't the one for me. Still looking forward to Two of Us Can Keep a Secret though, because that isn't following the same characters as a standalone, so it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. We also read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Didn't actually give this one a star rating on Goodreads because I just don't want to rate her books anymore. I don't really want to be recommending them. I don't really want to be talking about them. It would be a 4. I'm probably going to carry on with the series because I want to finish it at some point. I did have it on my 25 for 25 list, but also the way that she's acting at the moment, I just don't condone it and I don't care for it. On a happier note, A Sprinkle of Sorcery by Michelle Harrison. This is the 2nd book in the A Pinch of Magic series. This is following the Widdershins sisters again, and this time they have like a race against time because they've got to help a girl who turns up at their pub in the middle of the night to save her father from getting executed by travelling to a island that might or might not exist and possibly meeting a witch there. It's so much fun. Like, I love these books, and like I think they're really dark for middle grades. Like, again, I could see the twist coming in this one, so it didn't really surprise me. But so I could see the twist coming in this one, so it didn't surprise me. But I still really enjoyed the way that it was written, and I still really enjoyed getting to see the sisters again. And this one was a 4 star, so again, just dropped down a little bit from the first one, but still a really solid sequel. And I'm looking forward to the 3rd one again. We also read the Julian chapter by R.J. Palacio, which is a short story following Julian after the events of Wonder. Gave that one 4 stars, very, very enjoyable, and looking forward to reading the rest of the Oggy and Me collection. And we read The Damned by Renée Ahdieh, which is the sequel to The Beautiful. I thought it was the last book in the duology, but it turns out there's going to be another 2, apparently. So I was expecting it to wrap up really nicely, and it didn't, and I think that disappointed me a lot. So it completely didn't match my expectations, because I thought it was the last book in a series, and it wasn't. The ending was rushed. The characters bored me, which was awful, because the first one was a 5-star for me. Ended up giving The Damned 3 stars. I'll link the review down below, but this is a case that I wish I'd known it was a longer series, because I might not have rated this one as harshly. But also, everything happens in like the last 10%. There's like 90% of nothing much happening, and then 10% where everything happens. And if you're going to have a longer series, you can either have like a whole book where nothing happens, or you can bring that forward and shuffle some of the things around. And like, there's 2 antagonists, and I completely forgot that both of them existed, because they were just worthless. And that was awful, and I was really hyped for this one, so that breaks my heart a little bit. Only a few more to go, we are nearly there, we've got 5 books left to talk about, so then I'm going to do these in like reverse highest to lowest order, because it's the easiest way to order it. The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan was a 4.5 star from me. Astounding, considering it's like 800 pages, just over 800 pages, and what we did was we read a couple of chapters at a time, because we were planning on taking part in the Not Safe for Workathon, but it ended up kind of getting almost postponed. It wasn't really a thing because of everything that was going on in America, and quite understandably, like, it wasn't really the time to be doing something like that. But we decided to read 2 chapters a day until we finished it, because one of the tasks was to start on the first day and then finish it on the last day, and I think it was the perfect way to read this. Like, the characters go through really good development. The plot is interesting throughout. Like, there's constantly, like, a new thing to strive towards. There's a new location to go to. There are new characters to meet. People join the crew gets separated, and then they have to all come back together again. Like, it's just all the kind of, like, great tropes in one. But it doesn't get dry, which is wonderful. First book in a 14-book series. We've actually ended up ordering the next 4 because we were that into it, which is wild, because considering I'm a girl who used to be scared of big books, and I used to be scared of fantasy, and I love this, and I'm looking forward to picking up The Great Hunt and reading a few more chapters a day, because we've decided we're going to read each of them slowly, because then we won't feel overwhelmed, it won't get boring, and it won't get dry. Yeah, this was so close to being a 5 to me, that it kind of falls apart a little bit at the end, because you get like the kind of, it gets a bit formulaic, like, we've got to a new place, we're meeting new people, we're leaving them behind, we've got to a new place, we're meeting new people, we're leaving them behind, and it dragged on me a little bit. There were a few days when I was like, I really don't want to read the chapters today, but at least if we do, then they're over and they're done with. So I'm glad that we read it, and I'm glad that we're carrying on with it. And it was so close to being perfect, and I'm so happy about that, because I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did. I also read The End of White World Supremacy by Malcolm X, which was 4 different speeches that Malcolm X did in America, in the churches. I went on a bit of a non-fiction kind of reading, like, reserving spree, because my library app put up a lot of different, like, interesting non-fiction titles regarding, like, Black history and the Black Lives Matter movement. We're reading most of them in July. I managed to squeeze this one into June. I enjoyed it. It's hard to rate non-fiction like this. I think I ended up giving it a 4 star, because there are some bits, when quite obviously, because it's about religion and because it's about the Bible, there's some bits that are kind of derogatory towards same-sex relationships, and that's not something I'm ever going to be on board with. But it was interesting to learn more about, like, the kind of religion that Malcolm X preached, and about Islam, and the way that their Bible is different to ours. Like, I don't really know much about religion, but yeah, it was an interesting read, very hard to talk about. I've also got 3 more. This was our bonus round books, and we actually ended up reading all of them. So we've got The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King, which is the 2nd book in the Dark Tower series. This was a 3 star for me. This is a hard one, because, like, based off of the plot, I would have given it 5 stars. I loved the concept. You've got the gunslinger, he finds 3 doors, and through each door there's a different person, and he has to, like, draw his 3 kind of people to help him get to the tower eventually, I guess. So you've got Eddie, you've got Odetta, and you've got Jack. And plot-wise, perfect. It was just the writing. So you can tell it's written in the late 80s. There's a lot of sexist language. There's a lot of, like, derogatory terms towards women. There's a lot of derogatory terms towards black people. And it made me a bit uncomfortable, because, like, when you see the, like, N-word written that much in a very derogatory way from a white guy, you do kind of think like, yeah, definitely a product of its time. Interested to carry on with the rest of the series, and I'm trying my hardest to like not think of it in like a 2020 perspective, because it's 40 years old, 40 years old, and so it will have aged quite badly because standards were different back then. But yeah, it's hard for me to get as invested in these as I otherwise would if they were written now, and I think that if they were written now, it would be a very different story. I don't know if it would get published, if I'm honest, but yeah, like, interesting enough, but not the easiest one to, again, rate. Also read Zombie Underground by Darren Shan. This is the second book in the Zombie series. Again, this was a 3-star, more like a 2.5, rounded up to a 3. Didn't enjoy this as much as the first one. Still feel like if these had been edited better, it could have been a short series of like 4 or 5 books. This series is like 12 books or something ridiculous, but they're all this thin. So by the time you get into what's happening, it's kind of over. And you think, like, this, it's not really a story that can stand by itself. It requires the first book, it requires the sequels. Like, it's just, it's hard to talk about it by itself without giving spoilers, but basically there are zombies, and in this one, they're underground. In the next one, they're in the city. In the first one, there were hardly any zombies, so at least there was more zombies in this one. And the kind of lore and the way that he's making the zombies is very unique. It's very different compared to other zombies that I've encountered in the past. But yeah, just not really the one for me. Not sure if I'm going to carry on with the series, if I'm honest. Like, I'm interested to, because I can read it so easily in like a 2-hour sitting. Like, they're so quick. They've got illustrations throughout. The chapters start on a new page, so you get like lots of kind of big gaps all over the place, which is nice and handy. Like, I can't find any as I'm flicking through it. I should have tabbed one. There you go. Chapter 11. You get a nice clean page before chapter 11. So again, they end up being like under 200 pages, and they're easy enough to digest. I just don't know if they're really worth my time. And then the last book that we read this month, and probably the most controversial one I'm going to say, is The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, which I gave 2.5 stars to, and I feel like that was being generous. Like, I rounded it up to 3, but I didn't like it as much as the first one, and I fucking hated the first one, man. Like, they're just so boring. Like, how are these popular? Like, there are hobbits. They walk. I was rooting. There's a spider at the end, right? And he nearly kills. She, don't misgender spiders, Alyce. That's rude. She nearly kills the hobbits. And I was rooting for the spider. I was like, come on, kill him, because then I don't have to read the third book. It can just be a load of like blank pages that I just flick through, and then I'm like, oh, look, it's over. Like, when you're rooting for the spider to kill the good guys, they're not interesting good guys. They're not compelling. I don't want to follow them. This is split into book 3 and book 4. Book 3 follows Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and then Pippin and Merry as well. I liked that. I liked that half. If that half had been the second half, I would have been feeling much more positive towards this book. But you go from the really interesting bit of the story to the bloody dry, oh, we're just walking. Oh, look, got to try and find a way down this hill. Oh, look, got to try and find a way to get over there. Like, I don't care. I don't care that you're catching rabbits and skinning them and cooking them. I don't care that you don't like Gollum. I don't care that you're like meeting Boromir's brother and like chatting shit with him. I just don't care. And it's going to be so hard to get through the third one. We had 30 pages left, and I just kept putting it down and going, I can't do it. And I could do it, and I did do it. And I'm not glad that I did it, because I should have just DNF'd it. But they're classics, and I want to see what people love about them, because I can't see anything to love about them. And Sean's there like, oh, sure you'll enjoy the next one more? That's a lie, Sean. That's a bloody lie. I'm not going to enjoy any of them. I loved The Hobbit. Read The Hobbit in one sitting, really enjoyed it. Should have just left it there. And that's a really bad one to finish on, because that's a really negative one. But that was the 29 books that we read this month. And as you can tell, there were some good ones. There was 1 5-star this whole month, which I think proves I'm getting better at rating harshly, because I need to get better. I can't just be like, oh, it was written 3 stars. Like, I used to be so good at rating harshly, and then I just got really kind of like, oh, but they tried hard. Yeah, they tried hard, but if they wrote shit like The Two Towers, it probably shouldn't have been published. I mean, like, it should have been. People love it. People love it for some reason. Sophia's now struggling to open curtains, if you're wondering why there's yet more screaming. Sean is on the way to save her day. But yeah, it was a good reading month in that I read a lot of books that I wanted to read. We did the entire TBR, which we didn't think we'd be able to do because we didn't know when I was going back to work. The answer is tomorrow. So yeah, that wasn't really a worry. But yeah, read some good ones, some bad ones, some non-fiction, a non-fiction, some fantasy, some middle grade. Like, it's a good mix. I'm just hoping the next month we'll find some that are a bit more exciting to talk about rather than just me ranting constantly. Bailey, poor Bailey, having to put up with my ranting about all these books. But yes, thank you for watching. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you'd like to subscribe, then the button's down below. I'll leave my socials down in the description if you want to follow me on Twitter or on Goodreads. If you liked any of the books that I hated, please let me know why. If you hated any of the books that I liked, please let me know why. Just leave some comments down below and we can have a chat about the books. Hopefully I won't hate everything I read next month. Thank you for watching and we'll see you next time.